Hi guys, today we're going to be doing a video that just kind of randomly came to me. I don't even know where I got this idea from, but what I want to do is I want to swatch my favorite shade from all of my Juvia's Place palettes. I have 12 of them here. I thought that would be like the perfect number, and then what I'll do is I'm going to see how the palette would end up being if I swatch out one shade from all of these. So basically I want to make my own like Juvia's Place palette out of all of my favorite shades in my Juvia's Place palettes. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. So I'm not going to be including the Queen palette by Juvia's because I don't really consider this to be an eyeshadow palette, and also I just thought that 12 would be a better number for an eyeshadow palette. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to kind of grab from the top of my list here. So the first one is going to be the Nubian 2. This is one of my least favorite Juvia's Place palettes. I just haven't really used it that much. So I'm going to find my favorite shade in this palette, and I'm thinking, ooh, that's kind of tough. I probably should have thought this through like before I started this, but I just kind of assumed that I would look at a palette and be like, I know exactly which shade I'm going to use. But I'm pretty sure it's going to have to be this green down here because I absolutely love this. I think this is such a beautiful, very unique green. It's very dark as well, and I like that. So this is going to be the first start of my Juvia's Place palette. I wonder if I should name this palette something. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that. Next up we have the Masquerade Palette, which I have the mini version of because why would you have a large version of any of the Juvia's Place palettes, because those things are so big. Like if you have the option to get a mini, you know? So I think my favorite shade in this palette is for sure going to be the green up here too. Wow, I feel like this is going to end up being like a very green palette, but I find this green to be super unique to my collection. I feel like this is like the perfect Christmas green, and I remember last December I reached for this shade so often when I was doing like Christmas content because I just felt like it was one of those perfect greens that would just tie everything together and make it look very Christmassy. So I mean, so far we have two greens, so I wasn't really expecting that. I don't even know what I'm expecting out of the next palettes either, so we're just gonna have to take it one at a time and see where we end up. It's so funny because I'm looking at my next palette here and it's the Festival palette, and I already know which shade I'm going to pick because I'm going to pick the red because I just love the red in this. So I guess we're gonna be making a Christmas palette or something like this. So I'm gonna take the shade up here because this is by far my favorite in this palette. I mean, don't get me wrong, like all of these are beautiful. I also really like this kind of white silvery shade. I think that's beautiful. But just because I find reds to be very hard to come by, I'm definitely going to pick the red in this because this is actually like a true red, and I don't have a lot of those in my collection. As you can see, I got a little bit of green in my red there, so it might not be looking the truest of reds right now, but I still think this is a beautiful shadow. So we're, like I said, off to a very nice Christmas palette here. I do think that the next palette is going to throw it off a little bit and not make it as Christmassy because this is the Duce Palette. And again, my immediate reaction is like, I should swatch the green because the green is so beautiful, but I actually think I'm gonna go with this one because this is such a beautiful, it's not even a transition shade, it's almost like I want to just put this shade all over my lid because I think it's so beautiful. I also really like this duochrome up here, but I don't know, it just wasn't speaking to me today the way it usually does, and I want to just kind of go with like my first impression when I open these palettes right now because that is the shade that is the most appealing to me in this very moment. So we're gonna go ahead and swatch this one as well. So I really feel like we're gonna end up having a unique color story here, and no matter what happens next, at least we have two mattes and two shimmers, so it's not gonna be like a palette that's going to be impossible to work with. So let's just move on. Next up we have the Saharan palette by Juvia's, of course. Why would I say this is from Juvia's? I feel like I do that so many times. So let's see. This one is tough for me, but I think I'm so tempted to go and say this matte here, but I'm also in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's not really going to add a lot to my palette, but I feel like I still need to just go with my first impression here, and I'm going to swatch this because this shadow is so beautiful and it's such a very deep, dark, kind of berry shade, and it's very unique. So I feel like it's just going to be the shade that I would reach for if I could pick one shade from that palette. So I'm trying to like separate this from like whatever decisions I am making here. Obviously I want the color story to look good in the end, but I don't feel like it's really something that I should be deciding on whether or not I pick a shade from these palettes. So next up we have the Warrior 3 palette, which is the newest palette from Juvia's Place. Of course, from Juvia's Place. I'm such an idiot sometimes. I do have a video on this. I will link that in the corner if you haven't already seen that, but the first shadow that kind of catches my eye here is probably going to be the yellow, because I absolutely love yellow eyeshadow and I don't really have that many yellow eyeshadows, so that's definitely the one that kind of stood out to me that I want to swatch here. And it's not a bad yellow, it's also not like the best yellow in my collection, but I still just really like yellow eyeshadows, so whenever I have a yellow in a palette, my eyes immediately just get drawn to it. So as you can see, it doesn't swatch the best, but I still feel like this is kind of a fun color story. Next up we have the Zulu palette, which I feel like is the sister to the Warrior 3, and the shade that's definitely jumping out to me in this is the teal blue here. I love this shadow, I think it's stunning. I'm honestly shocked that I'm not picking more shimmers, because usually like when I think of Juvia's Place, I think of their shimmers because I love them. Like it's one of my favorite shimmer formulas. But for some reason, like my eyes just go to mattes today and I don't know why and I can't explain it, and I'm not going to try to explain it because it doesn't matter. So let's move into the Tri palette by... I need to stop. Let's move into the Tri palette. And the shade that I'm going to pick in this is absolutely, without a doubt, going to be Masai. I think that's how you say it, but I just love me a lime green matte. It's like my favorite. And again, like if I were to go by just color story here, I definitely would have gone with some kind of a shimmer, because I mean it just would have made for a more complete palette. But since this is where my eyes went, this is what I'm going with. And if you guys have a lot of Juvia's Place palettes as well, I would love to see someone else do this, because I feel like someone would come up with like the next Juvia's Place palette, like something that would just be absolutely perfect. This palette right here is one that I haven't really used a lot, and it's the Afrique palette. And I think the shade in this that gets me the most excited is going to be this red shimmer down here, because again, red shimmers is one of those things that are kind of hard to come by. You don't have a lot of them, so when I see one in a palette, my eyes always go to that one, and it's always the shade that I want to use because it's kind of rare, I guess, if you will. Oh, I just love that. That is so beautiful. Ooh, yeah. Oh, that's so pretty. Isn't it funny that all of the shimmers I have are just green and red? Again, I told you, it's going to be a Christmas palette. Next up in my pile here, we have the Magic palette. If you have not already seen this palette, this is one of my favorite Juvia's Place palettes because I think the color story in this is very versatile and you can do a lot of things with this palette. Now, I will admit that when I was swatching this second green shimmer here and I said that this was like my perfect Christmas shade, the one that I was thinking about is actually this one from this palette. Not going to pick this one though because it's not my favorite shade in this palette in particular, and it's not where my mind goes today, because I'm going to choose Faso because this is such a beautiful, 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 beautiful kind of topper shade. And it has like a lilac shift to it, and it's just, oh, it's so beautiful. I mean, if you spray this and you layer this on top of something else, it just transforms it into like the most beautiful thing in the world. And I just think this is so pretty. Can you tell I like rainbow shades? I feel like this is going to be a very bright palette. But we'll see, that could change. We have two more palettes left, and the next one is the Saharan palette. If you have not already seen this palette, here is what it looks like, and I think the shade in this palette that I like the most is probably going to be this gold shimmer up here, because it has a bit of a kind of green shift to it, and I find it to be quite unique. I also really like the pink shimmer down here, but if I had to choose one, which obviously I do in this video, it's going to be this one. Oh, it's just like a dirty money kind of shade, and I think that's really, really, really pretty. Can you even see the shift in that? So pretty. So for the last palette, we have probably my least favorite Juvia's Place palette, and it's the Nubian 3. So let's see, where am I going with this? My eyes definitely goes to the silver shimmer right away because I love a good silver shimmer. So that's going to be the shade that I'm picking from this palette. Again, if I could like base my decision based on what color story is going to end up being here, I probably would not have picked this shade. But since it was the shade that I looked at first and I knew that I wanted to pick, this is the one that I'm going to pick. And I really like gold and silvers. I actually quite like neutral shimmers, even though I don't like neutral mattes. So this is the final color story. I think this is very interesting. So I'm of course going to have a full picture of a palette up on the screen so you can see what they all look like kind of put together. So let me know what you think of this palette. Would you buy this palette? Would I buy this palette? I don't know. I feel like I probably would because it is kind of a unique color story. I don't know if I've seen a palette like this before. It's not your basic rainbow palette. It's definitely like a rainbow palette with a twist. And I also don't feel like there's, you know what I mean? Like there's not like a blue and a purple and a green and a red and a yellow. Like there's like variations of tones in here. Like we have a pink here, we have a red, we have kind of like a berry shade as well as a red shimmer. We have two sort of yellow shades, we have like 3 greens. I don't know, I kind of like this color story. I'm kind of inspired by this. Yeah, I quite like that. So I think that's really cool. If you guys have any brands that you have a lot of palettes from that you could do this with, absolutely do so. Even if you just pick 10 random palettes from your collection or something like that, I would still love to see something like this because it is super fun. So yeah, let me know if you liked this video. I hope you did. I mean, it was the most random idea that I've thought of in a while, but I just wanted to sit down and film it because I thought it would be fun, and I think this is kind of fun. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see anything that's maybe kind of similar content, you can click on one of these. Can't promise that it'll be similar, it probably won't, but if you're new to my channel, I would also love it if you would consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one.